segregated lunch counters throughout the South, and refused to leave until they were served. Their goal was not really to get breakfast. It was to end segregation. That fact is so obvious that it is hard to believe that the pro-Israel lobby is using it as an indictment. Of course the goal of the flotilla was to break the blockade. Of course Martin Luther King provoked the civil authorities of the South to break segregation. Of course the Solidarity movement in Poland used workers' rights as a pretext to break Soviet-imposed communism. The bottom line is that the men and women of the flotilla had every right to attempt to destroy an illegal blockade that Israel had no legal standing to impose, and which was designed to inflict collective punishment on the people of Gaza. There is no truth to the story that Israel would have delivered the goods on the ships to Gaza if asked. The Israelis never made that offer, and, judging by years of precedent, would have blocked any delivery. As for the Israeli argument that its soldiers were attacked, that is ridiculous. Israeli commandos were ordered to board a civilian ship in international waters, and the government that sent them claims that the resisting passengers attacked them without provocation. This is like a carjacker complaining to the police that the driver bashed him with a crowbar that was under the seat. Neither carjackers nor hijackers should expect their victims to acquiesce peacefully. Here are the facts about life in Gaza today, facts that only can be changed by breaking the blockade. These data come from the American Near East Relief Association, ANRA, which provides relief to Gazans to the extent permitted by the Israeli and American authorities. ANRA is neither pro-Israel nor pro-Palestinian. It has no political agenda at all. It merely determines what human needs are and tries to respond to them. 8 out of 10 Gazans depend on foreign aid to survive. The World Food Programme says Gaza requires a minimum of 400 trucks a day to meet basic nutritional needs, yet an average of just 171 trucks worth of supplies enters Gaza every week. Clothes that were held in the port of Ashdod for over a year were released into Gaza, but arrived covered with mold and mildew, unusable. 95% of Gaza's water fails World Health Organization standards, leaving thousands of newborns at risk of poisoning. Anemia for children under the age of 5 is estimated at 48%. 75 million liters of untreated sewage are pumped into the Mediterranean Sea every day because piping and spare parts are not permitted. During the 2009 bombing, more than 120,000 jobs were lost as Gaza's industrial zone was destroyed. 15,000 homes and apartments were damaged or destroyed, and 1/3 of all schools were destroyed. None of these can be rebuilt because construction supplies are kept out by the Israeli authorities. So what is the blockade about? It is not about stopping terrorism. Hamas has repeatedly offered Israel an indefinite ceasefire in exchange for lifting the blockade. And, on a half-dozen occasions, Israel accepted the deal, but did not live up to its side of it. In fact, the 2009 war began after Israel ignored its commitments under the Gaza ceasefire agreement, continued the blockade, and then provoked the resumption of attacks on Sderot through a series of targeted assassinations of Palestinians. Israel claims that no ceasefire agreement curtails its right to kill any Palestinian it deems to be a terrorist. Israel asserts that it will not accept any long-term ceasefire agreement with Hamas because Hamas does not recognize its right to exist. But Israel does not need the permission of anyone to exist, certainly not Hamas. All it needs from Hamas is an end to violence, and that is precisely what Hamas is offering in exchange for lifting the blockade. This is not to say that Hamas need never recognize Israel. It should. But it is ridiculous to insist on recognition as a precondition for anything. Recognition would be the end result of negotiations, not a precondition for it. But that is not what Israel wants. It wants to destroy Hamas because it is a terrorist organization. And that makes sense until one realizes that the African National Congress, Sinn Féin, the Israeli IGAN, the Algerian FLN, and a host of other resistance movements were called terrorist organizations before negotiations brought them to power. Former Israeli Prime Ministers Menachem Begin and Yitzhak Shami were both unabashed terrorists prior to their entrance into respectable politics. And so what? If dealing with terrorists, as Israel has repeatedly done with Hezbollah, will help achieve a worthy goal, why not do it? After all, if negotiations fail, one can always walk away. But Israel will not change its self-defeating policies until we change ours. And there is no evidence that is happening, at least, not until after the November elections, for obvious reasons. For now, our policies are joined at the hip with Israel's. We support the blockade of Gaza. We oppose any efforts at reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas. We even back Israel's opposition to the Arab Peace Initiative, which offers Israel full peace and normalization of relations with every Arab country in exchange for the creation of a Palestinian state in the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. Enough is enough. The Obama administration needs to join the rest of the world in demanding an end to the Gaza blockade as a first big step toward the resumption of negotiations. The attack on the flotilla was one of the most disastrous blunders in Israel's history. At last, the whole world sees Israel's policy of collective punishment for what it is: a means to perpetuate the occupation forever. Only the United States government has chosen to close its eyes. The occupation is killing Israel. And we are on the sidelines letting it happen. Somalia. Rachel Corrie on her way. By Free Gaza Team Cyprus, June 4, 2010. The Rachel Corrie is 150 miles away from Gaza in international waters, and on her way. They will arrive on Saturday morning. The 1,200-ton cargo ship is the last ship from the Freedom Flotilla, and is loaded with construction materials, 22 tons of paper and many other supplies that Israel refuses to allow into the imprisoned people of Gaza. Some of the high-profile people on board. Mered Maguire is from Belfast, Ireland, a Nobel Peace Laureate, L976, and co-founder of Peace People Northern Ireland. She was awarded the Nobel for her work for peace and a non-violent solution to the ethnic/political conflict in Northern Ireland. Mered went on the maiden voyage of dignity in October 2008, the second successful voyage for the Free Gaza movement. She was also on board Spirit when Israel hijacked the boat in international waters, taking all 21 humanitarian passengers to Israel, where they were arrested, detained for a week in an Israeli prison and then deported. Dennis Halliday, from Ireland, a UN Assistant Secretary General from 1994 to 98. Appointed by S.G. Boutros Ghali, he served as ASG UN Human Resources Management in New York, and in mid-1997 to end 1998 as Head Humanitarian Program in Iraq, to support the Iraqi people struggling under the genocidal impact of UN sanctions. Since resigning from the UN in 1998, Halliday has delivered numerous parliamentary briefings, provided extensive media inputs, and has given public/university lectures on Iraq, human rights, and the UN, in particular its reform. Matthias Chang Wen-chi is a Malaysian of Chinese descent. He is a barrister of 32 years standing, and once served as the political secretary to the fourth Prime Minister of Malaysia, Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. He is the author of 3 bestsellers, Future Fast Forward, Brain Was Shed for War, Programmed to Kill, and The Shadow Moneylenders and the Global Financial Tsunami, published in the US and in Malaysia. Modniza bin Zakaria, Perak, Malaysia is a member of the Malaysian Parliament. In addition, there is a 3-member camera crew on board from Malaysia TV3 and journalist Shamsul Akmal bin Musa Kamal. The passengers on board the ship have stated, communication is difficult and sometimes impossible, and there are many rumors out there started by Israeli authorities, but there is no way we are going to Ashdod. We are, for sure, on our way to Gaza. Martin wants Rachel Corrie allowed into Gaza. By Greta Berlin, Friday, June 4, 2010, 20-27. The Irish government believes Rachel Corrie should be allowed to reach Gaza, according to Minister for Foreign Affairs Micheál Martin. He said the ship should be allowed to proceed to Gaza and unload its humanitarian cargo if, as is their stated intention, the Israeli government intercepts the Rachel Corrie. The government demands that it demonstrate every restraint. Those on board the Rachel Corrie have made clear their peaceful intentions and have stated that they will offer no resistance to Israeli forces. Based on these assurances, there can be no justification for the use of force against any person on board the Rachel Corrie. The minister has been involved in efforts to strike an agreement between both sides, but that was declined by the activists on the vessel. Mr. Martin said he had reached agreement with the Israeli government to allow the vessel dock in the Israeli port of Ashdod. The ship's cargo would have been unloaded and inspected under supervision from the UN and officials from his department. It would then have been transported to Gaza along with 2 activists. In a statement, Minister Martin said, "In my view, such an arrangement would have offered a useful precedent for future humanitarian shipments, pending the complete lifting of the blockade." This proposal was put to those on board the Rachel Corrie who, on Friday afternoon, after careful consideration, and having thanked the government for its efforts, declined to accept it. I fully respect their right to do so, and to continue their protest action by seeking to sail to Gaza. The Irish Palestinian Solidarity Campaign said the offer was unacceptable to those on the Rachel Corrie. Israel delivers message to Rachel Corrie. Israel earlier proposed that the ship sail to the port of Ashdod, where it would ensure that no weapons and/or war material were on board. Israel's Foreign Ministry Director General Yossi Gal said this clear message had been delivered to the Rachel Corrie. If the ship decides to sail to the port of Ashdod in Israel, then we will ensure its safe arrival and will not board it, he said. Speaking on RTE's News at 1, activist and Nobel laureate Mered Corrigan Maguire said the vessel was progressing to Gaza and was expected to arrive in the 25-mile exclusion zone at 6 a.m. Irish time tomorrow. The IPSC said the vessel is now 100 miles from Gaza and will slow down through the night to avoid any confrontation in darkness. Turkey has sent 2 medical planes to Israel to bring back 5 of its nationals wounded during Israel's attack on the flotilla. The 5, all men, are the last Turkish pro-Palestinian activists still being held in Israel. The bodies of the 9 people killed, 8 Turks and a US citizen of Turkish origin, were returned to Turkey yesterday, along with 19 wounded and 450 activists rounded up during the commando raid. Rachel Corrie equipment jammed by Free Gaza Team the 5th of June, 3:30 a.m. The Ireland-Palestine Solidarity Campaign, IPSC, has been contacted by the MV Rachel Corrie in the past few minutes. Jenny Graham reported that they had been followed by Israeli ships for about 2 hours, and that in the last few minutes, 2 ships were approaching from the port side. Ms. Graham said that equipment on board had been jammed by the Israeli Navy and that they expected their satellite phone to be jammed soon as well. The line was bad, and we were unable to determine the exact location of the Rachel Corrie relative to their destination. On hearing of the news, Frida Hughes of the IPSC said, "We all hope that those on board the Rachel Corrie will remain safe and that there will be no repeat of Monday's terrible attack on the Freedom Flotilla. Our hearts are with you." The Rachel Corrie is flying their Irish, Malaysian, and Filipino flags at half-mast as a mark of respect for their murdered comrades from the Mavi Marmara, which was hijacked on Monday by Israeli commandos in an attack that left at least 9 people dead. Speaking about Minister Michiel Martin's statement earlier, in which he said that those on board the Rachel Corrie had rejected a so-called deal that would involve them docking in the Israeli port of Ashdod, Jenny Graham said, "We will have no part in a deal that involves us legitimizing the siege of Gaza. We intend to continue on our mission to deliver our cargo of aid and supplies to the people of Gaza. This has always been our intention." Israeli military forcibly stops aid boat to Gaza again. By Free Gaza Team. Off the Gaza coast, the 5th of June. Just before 9 a.m. GMT this morning, the Israeli military forcibly seized the Irish-owned humanitarian relief ship, the MV Rachel Corrie, preventing it from delivering over 1,000 tons of medical and construction supplies to besieged Gaza. For the second time in less than a week, Israeli naval commandos stormed an unarmed aid ship, brutally taking its passengers hostage and towing the ship toward Ashdod port in southern Israel. It is not yet known whether any of the Rachel Corrie's passengers were killed or injured during the attack, but they are believed to be unharmed. The ship carried 11 passengers and 9 crew members from 5 different countries, mostly Ireland and Malaysia,